rushing through the crowded train station when my entire life completely shattered into pieces. My name is Bridget, a 32-year-old architect who always believed that hard work would protect my family. As my phone slipped from my trembling fingers to smack harshly against the cold concrete floor, an old man wearing a weathered cowboy hat calmly stepped forward through the chaotic crowd to pick it up. He handed the device back to me with a piercing look in his eyes before delivering a chilling warning. "Don't get on the train. Go home and hide in the wardrobe. Don't ask any questions," he whispered. Ignoring the absolute absurdity of his bizarre instruction, an unexplainable knot of pure anxiety in my stomach forced me to abandon my business trip entirely. I returned to my silent house an hour later to quietly lock myself inside the cramped walk-in closet of my home office. Sitting there in the suffocating darkness among dusty storage boxes, I felt incredibly stupid for actually surrendering my logic to a random stranger at the transit terminal. That embarrassing feeling vanished instantly the moment heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway right outside my secret hiding spot. I held my breath as the familiar voices of the two people I loved most in this world began discussing a cold-blooded plot to completely destroy my life. If you were in my situation, what would you do? Leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and don't forget to share this story so we can discuss it together. 2 weeks before that fateful train ride. My peaceful life in Tempe was abruptly turned upside down when my mother and my sister Amber showed up at my front door with a massive pile of bulky suitcases. Mom enthusiastically claimed that our fragmented family desperately needed to live closer together to share our joys and sorrows lovingly under one single roof, after spending so many years living completely separate lives. I instantly felt a deep wave of cold suspicion washing over me because they had always deliberately kept a massive emotional and physical distance from my personal affairs in the past. Both of them actively maintained incredibly extravagant lifestyles filled with constant materialistic bragging while only ever reaching out to contact me whenever their bank accounts unexpectedly ran empty. They would shamelessly parade around town in designer clothes they could barely afford, while secretly treating my hard-earned financial stability as their personal unlimited emergency fund. My internal anxiety only grew significantly stronger over the next few days, as Amber began showing an unusually intense interest in my daily architectural firm routines. "Why, what time exactly does your firm let you out on Friday afternoons, Bridget?" Amber casually asked with a fake sweet smile while aggressively pouring herself a large glass of the expensive wine I had just purchased for a special occasion. I carefully told her my professional schedule fluctuated wildly, depending on unexpected client meetings to deliberately avoid giving her any concrete timeline for my daily absences from the property. Needing a desperately safe space to vent my mounting domestic frustrations, I met my best friend Sarah at a quiet local cafe later that weekend to discuss the suffocating situation. I thoroughly explained every strange detail about their sudden domestic behavior while nervously stirring my cooling black coffee under the dim cafe lights. "You need to be extremely careful because sudden kindness from deeply pragmatic people usually hides a truly terrible hidden motive," Sarah warned me, with a deeply concerned expression settling heavily on her face. Her chilling words resonated perfectly with the dark gut feeling I had been trying so hard to politely ignore, since the exact moment they moved their expensive belongings into my vacant guest rooms. Sarah practically begged me to immediately secure my valuables because she knew exactly how ruthlessly manipulative my family members could become when they desperately wanted something valuable from someone else. Taking Sarah's ominous warning completely to heart, I started conducting quiet daily inspections of my private home office late at night, while the rest of the house was deeply asleep. Approaching my heavy oak desk with nothing but the faint illumination from my phone screen, I carefully examined the bottom drawer, where I securely stored the original property deed to my house, alongside other vital legal documents. My heart pounded furiously against my ribs when I clearly noticed the delicate metal lock mechanism bore fresh, microscopic scratches, indicating someone had recently tried to forcefully pry it open with a sharp tool. I gently ran my trembling fingers over the damaged metal surface while finally realizing the terrifying truth about their sudden, unnatural desire for heartwarming family bonding. Instead of furiously confronting them directly with my alarming discovery, I made the calculated decision to maintain absolute silence and convincingly pretend everything was perfectly normal in our supposedly happy household. I cheerfully cooked a lavish breakfast for them the very next morning, while secretly raising my mental defenses to the highest possible level against my own flesh and blood. I knew rushing into a loud screaming match without concrete, unarguable evidence would only make them cleverly change their devious tactics, so I simply waited patiently in the shadows for them to make their next critical mistake. At exactly 8 o'clock on that fateful Wednesday morning, I was rushing through the wind-swept Tempe train station to catch my usual commute when the life-changing incident occurred. My fingers were slippery with sweat from the humid Arizona morning air, causing my expensive iPhone to suddenly slide out of my grip and crash violently against the unforgiving concrete floor right in the middle of the surging crowd. Before I could even bend down to retrieve my scattered belongings, a mysterious old man named Mr. Harrison, wearing a wide-brimmed cowboy hat, stepped forward to calmly pick it up from the dusty ground. He handed the device back to me while looking directly into my soul with an icy stare that made the tiny hairs on the back of my neck stand up in pure terror. "Bridget, you must not board this train today. Go home immediately and hide yourself inside the wardrobe without asking a single question," Mr. Harrison whispered, with a voice that sounded like grinding gravel. I stood frozen on the bustling platform for several long seconds while feeling a profound sense of internal conflict between my professional responsibilities and this chillingly specific warning from a total stranger. My logical mind screamed at me to simply ignore the crazy ramblings of an eccentric local and proceed to my high-stakes architectural meeting with our firm's biggest investors. "Are you all right, miss, or are you waiting for someone special?" a passing commuter asked, while glancing curiously at my pale face as the loud train whistle signaled its final departure from the station. Taking a shaky breath while clutching my phone tightly against my chest, I finally surrendered to my overwhelming gut instinct and pushed my way back through the heavy glass exit doors. I quickly hailed a yellow taxi on the busy street corner to begin the tense 10-minute ride back to my quiet suburban neighborhood in North Tempe. Instead of entering through the main front door where Mom or Amber might easily spot me, I carefully used my remote to open the heavy garage door just enough to slide underneath its metal frame. I moved through the kitchen like a silent ghost, avoiding every creaky floorboard I had known since childhood, until I finally reached the sanctuary of my private home office. I hurriedly opened the heavy wooden doors of my spacious walk-in closet before squeezing myself into the cramped space behind several rows of hanging winter coats and forgotten blueprints. I struggled to regulate my heavy breathing while sitting on the cold floor in the absolute darkness, feeling the sharp edges of the storage boxes pressing painfully against my spine. Every small sound in the house now seemed magnified 100 times as I waited in the suffocating silence for something terrible to happen. I checked the glowing screen of my phone to ensure the volume was completely muted before leaning my head back against the wall to prepare myself for the devastating truth I was about to overhear. The air inside the small closet felt increasingly thin and dusty as the minutes ticked by, yet I refused to move even a single inch from my designated hiding spot. Approximately 20 minutes later, the unmistakable heavy footsteps of Mom and Amber echoed sharply down the hardwood hallway before coming to a sudden halt right inside my private home office. Believing their unsuspecting prey had already departed for a long day of architectural meetings, they began a frantic and systematic search through my filing cabinets to locate the original property deed. I sat frozen in the suffocating darkness of the wardrobe as the loud sounds of drawers being violently forced open filled the small room with an aggressive energy. Amber, you need to find that blue folder immediately, because the notary is expecting our call before the banks close this afternoon. Mom commanded with a cold urgency that I had never heard in her voice before. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by a giant icy hand as I listened to them discuss the horrifying details of forging my legal signature on a power of attorney document. They were openly planning to seize my inheritance and sell my sanctuary to the highest bidder behind my back, while I was supposedly working hard to provide for them. The brutal reason for this betrayal finally surfaced when Amber admitted her secret gambling debts had spiraled out of control to reach nearly $80,000 in high-interest loans. Instead of holding her responsible for her reckless actions, Mom calmly agreed that stripping me of my only asset was the only logical way to save her favorite child from financial ruin. Bridget always has a way of making more money with her fancy career, so she will eventually recover from losing this old house. Amber muttered with a chilling lack of remorse that made my blood run cold. I reached into my pocket with trembling fingers to retrieve my phone, carefully pressing the record button to capture every single word of their heartless conversation. My hands shook so violently that I feared the slight rustle of my clothes would betray my location, yet I remained perfectly still in the dusty shadows. A devastating mixture of raw emotional pain and white-hot fury surged through my veins as the realization of my true status in this family became undeniably clear. I had never truly been a beloved daughter or a sister to them, but rather a convenient financial tool to be used and discarded whenever they faced the consequences of their own greed. We should just tell the real estate agent that Bridget is too busy with her London trip to sign the closing papers in person, Mom suggested while tossed aside several of my personal childhood photographs to reach the back of the desk drawer. Every sentence they uttered was a sharp dagger to my soul, severing the final threads of loyalty that had once bound me to these two manipulative women. I continued to record their cold-blooded calculations for nearly 30 minutes, ensuring that every detail of their fraudulent scheme was documented as irrefutable evidence for the legal battle ahead. The air in the closet felt increasingly thin and bitter as I absorbed the full weight of their betrayal while waiting for the perfect moment to execute my silent escape from this den of snakes. As soon as the roaring sound of their car engine faded away into the distance for the celebratory shopping spree, immediately burst out of the cramped wardrobe with a heart turned into cold stone and a mind filled with an unyielding determination. I rushed toward my garage to start my own vehicle before driving straight to the downtown office of my lawyer, Mr. Sterling, who had been a loyal family friend since my father was still alive. My hands were still shaking slightly as I sat across from his heavy mahogany desk while recounting the entire horrifying sequence of events that had unfolded inside my own home office just minutes ago. I played the crystal-clear audio recording of their heartless conversation for him, watching his expression shift from professional curiosity to absolute disbelief as the voices of Mom and Amber detailed their fraudulent scheme. Mr. Sterling did not waste a single second before jumping into action by initiating emergency legal procedures to effectively freeze all potential property transactions linked to my residential address in Tempe. He skillfully drafted a formal notice to the county recorder's office to ensure that any document bearing a forged version of my signature would be flagged as an immediate criminal act by the local authorities. Together, we sat in the quiet library of his firm for several hours to meticulously craft a detailed trap designed to catch both of them in the middle of their illegal closing on Saturday afternoon. We must allow them to believe their deception is working perfectly, so that the evidence of their fraud becomes absolutely irrefutable in a court of law, Mr. Sterling advised, while adjusting his spectacles with a grim look of professional focus. Right there, in the safety of his private office, I picked up my phone to call Mom while intentionally adopting a fake tone of deep regret for our supposedly ruined weekend plans. I calmly informed her that my architectural firm had just assigned me to an urgent international project requiring me to depart for London on a late-night flight for at least 1 full week. Oh, Bridget, that is such a wonderful opportunity for your career. Despite the unfortunate timing for our family time, Mom chirped through the speakers with a joy so transparent it made my stomach churn in absolute disgust. She spent the next 5 minutes pretending to be a supportive mother by telling me to pack my warmest coats and to stay safe in the big city while she secretly prepared to sell my roof from over my head. Listening to her deceptive words of encouragement while knowing she was currently standing in a designer boutique using my credit card felt like a final death blow to our relationship. By the time I hung up the phone, my heart had become completely frozen toward the woman who gave me life, but was now actively trying to destroy my future for the sake of Amber's greed. Mr. Sterling handed me a glass of water and reminded me that the coming days would require the greatest performance of my life to ensure that justice was finally served to those who had betrayed my trust so deeply. Early the next morning, I feigned a hurried departure by dragging my heavy suitcases out to the driveway, as if I were truly beginning my long journey to London. But in reality, I secretly checked into a small boutique hotel located only a few miles away from my suburban neighborhood. From the quiet safety of my darkened hotel room, I began monitoring every single movement inside my own house through the high-definition security camera system that I had discreetly installed several months ago for professional protection. A wave of intense nausea and pure disgust washed over me as I watched Mom and Amber through the glowing screen of my laptop, while they ruthlessly began tossing out the cherished personal belongings of my late father to prepare the property for its new owners. They treated his precious collection of vintage architecture books and old leather journals like worthless pieces of trash, carelessly stuffing them into oversized black garbage bags with a cold efficiency that made my stomach churn in absolute agony. We should clear out the master bedroom completely before the movers arrive on Monday morning so that the new buyers can see the full potential of this space, Amber remarked with a greedy glint in her eyes while pointing toward the wall where my father's favorite portrait used to hang in a place of honor. Later that afternoon, my heart pounded with a mixture of rage and anticipation as I observed Amber welcoming a shady-looking real estate broker into the living room for a final walkthrough before their official signing ceremony scheduled for Saturday afternoon. The broker moved through my private sanctuary like a predator, assessing a kill, oblivious to the fact that his every word and gesture was being recorded as evidence of a massive felony in progress. While I was submerged in the shadows of my temporary hiding spot, my phone buzzed with a short but decisive text message from my lawyer, Mr. Sterling, who confirmed that he had finalized all the necessary legal documentation and was now fully prepared to coordinate with the local police department to catch both of them red-handed at the exact moment of their ultimate deception. I spent several restless nights in that lonely hotel room, repeatedly reviewing the surveillance footage until my eyes burned with exhaustion, yet each playback only served to further solidify my ironclad determination to permanently sever all ties with my biological family. Is the wire transfer definitely scheduled for immediately after the signatures are notarized tomorrow? Mom asked with an edge of desperate impatience in her voice as she paced nervously across the Persian rug that had been in our family for generations. Watching them bond over the destruction of my future made me realize with chilling clarity that I had grown significantly stronger and much more resilient through this entire traumatic ordeal. I finally understood the harsh reality that offering blind kindness without the stern protection of the law was nothing more than a dangerous form of foolishness that invited predators into my home under the guise of family. By the time the sun began to rise on Saturday morning, I no longer felt like a grieving victim of betrayal, but rather like a focused strategist who was ready to deliver a final, unyielding blow to the people who had mistaken my generosity for weakness. Every piece of evidence was now securely stored in multiple cloud locations, ensuring that no amount of lying or manipulation from Amber or Mom could ever erase the digital proof of their crimes against me. At exactly 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, the atmosphere inside my living room became thick with a palpable tension as the real estate broker slowly placed the thick stack of closing documents onto the coffee table. Both Mom and Amber were dressed in their most expensive designer outfits to exude an aura of wealthy sophistication, while they warmly welcomed the prospective buyers with fake smiles and practiced grace. They were visibly trembling with a greedy excitement at the prospect of immediately receiving the massive sum of $700,000 from the fraudulent sale of my private sanctuary. I watched through the hidden camera feed as Amber reached for a sleek gold fountain pen, her hand hovering over the signature line, where she intended to forge my name on the most critical legal document of the entire transaction. This house has been in our family for generations, and we are just so happy to see it go to such a lovely young couple. Mom lied with a sickeningly sweet voice that made my skin crawl with absolute revulsion. Just as Amber began to lower the pen to the paper to finalize their betrayal, I pushed the front door wide open while accompanied by Mr. Sterling and two stern-faced police officers from the Tempe department. The sudden intrusion caused everyone in the room to freeze in utter shock as the color drained from Amber's face until she looked like a ghost staring at her own demise. I walked toward the center of the room with a cold and unwavering gaze, pulling out my phone to play the crystal-clear audio recording of their earlier conversation right in front of the stunned broker and the law enforcement officials. The room was filled with the haunting sound of their own voices meticulously planning to steal my inheritance and leave me homeless for the sake of Amber's gambling debts. Mom immediately collapsed onto the velvet sofa while beginning a frantic and desperate explanation about the supposed bonds of family love and the extreme financial hardship of her eldest daughter. "Bridget, please try to understand that we were only doing this because your sister was in such a dangerous situation with her creditors," she wailed with crocodile tears streaming down her cheeks in a pathetic attempt to manipulate my emotions one last time. Amber tried to snatch the forged contract from the table to destroy the evidence of her crime, but the officers were much faster and moved in to restrain her before she could interfere with the legal proceedings. They firmly placed her in handcuffs while seizing the signed documents as ironclad proof of her intent to commit a serious act of federal wire fraud and identity theft. I stood perfectly still amidst the chaos of their screaming and pleading, feeling a profound sense of justice finally replacing the heavy burden of betrayal I had carried since that morning at the train station. The real estate broker hurriedly gathered his things and fled the house in a state of absolute disbelief, while the police began the formal process of arresting Amber for her numerous felony offenses. Watching my own sister being led away in restraints, while Mom begged for a mercy she never showed me, was the most difficult yet necessary moment of my entire adult life. I realized then that the woman standing before me was no longer my mother, but a stranger who had willingly chosen a criminal path over the safety and well-being of her youngest child. As the police car carrying Amber disappeared around the corner of the street, I stood silently watching my house while knowing deep in my heart that it would never be a sanctuary for me again. Without allowing any room for further negotiation or hollow apologies, I immediately served Mom with a formal eviction notice right there in the middle of the afternoon. Under the strict property laws of Arizona, Amber now faced severe federal legal consequences, including multiple felony charges for identity theft and large-scale real estate fraud. I made the painful but necessary decision to put the old house on the market, choosing to move to a completely different city in Arizona to start a brand new life of true freedom and peace. I chose to sever all forms of communication with both Mom and Amber because I finally understood that offering forgiveness at this stage would only be an act of enabling their inherent evil. By the time the sun set over the desert horizon, I had already packed my most essential belongings and left the keys with Mr. Sterling to handle the final sale of the property. Before we conclude today's intense story, let us take a moment to reflect on the devastating reality that Bridget had to face within her own bloodline. Do not hurry to click away from this video, because the lessons hidden in this betrayal are vital for anyone navigating complex family dynamics in the modern world. From a creator's perspective, this story serves as a powerful reminder that biological ties should never be used as a free pass for psychological or financial abuse. We often feel an immense social pressure to forgive our family members regardless of their toxic actions, yet Bridget's journey proves that setting firm boundaries is sometimes the only way to survive. True independence is not just about having a successful career or owning a home, but it is also about having the courage to walk away from people who treat your kindness as a weakness to be exploited. Generosity without the protection of personal wisdom and legal boundaries is merely an invitation for predators to enter your life under the guise of love. If you were in Bridget's position, would you have the incredible strength to call the police on your own sister and evict your own mother after such a betrayal? Perhaps some of you believe in offering a second chance, or maybe you have a completely different strategy for handling such a deep-seated domestic conspiracy within your own household. I am truly interested in hearing your personal perspectives, so please share your thoughts and comments in the section below to start a meaningful conversation with our community. Thank you so very much for staying with us until the very end of this emotional journey, and for supporting the values of justice and self-respect that we promote here. We truly appreciate your loyalty and encourage you to share this story with anyone who might need a reminder.